So I went to my dad and I said, hey, what do you think? You want me to come to work for you?
Yeah.
You know, don't you want this? And he said, yeah, sure. And he goes, see that trailer load of BF Goodrich tires? Your job every day is to unload that trailer. You can't just have somebody going out there selling. They have to really understand the operation. The way I put it is this. You have UPS, FedEx, the LTL carriers. They all provide a great service. You use those services, you got to fit into their box. You come to us, we build the box for you. With home delivery, it could be appliances, could be bedding, could be cabinetry. It's a business within a business. You have to run it separately. You really have to have a customer service department dedicated to that. Yes. Because I really truly believe we as consumers are more demanding than we are as business people. Listen, this industry is different. It's not Uber. You're not doing a single service. Uber is pull up, stop, wait a few minutes, drive, stop, wait a few minutes. That's it. You have to be compliant. And you have to understand certain things. I'm going to tell you right now, the driver of yesteryear compared to the driver of today, there is a vast difference. There was definitely times that I wanted to come take y'all out. Absolutely. We're all competitors. We're all friends in a sense, too. But if there were a personal situation, somebody walked up to me and said, hey, look, can you lay back on this? It would be like, sure, no problem. Because the relationship means more than going after $100,000 worth of business or something like that. Thank God every single day for what I have, and I thank Him for my problems, because our problems could be so much worse. We were probably first, and then we became last. And we're on our journey to being first again.
I'm your host, Jason Burns, and we'll be bringing you the stories from the front lines, everything from last mile to the first mile in the most dynamic industry in today's supply chain. If you like the content we're producing, the videos we're releasing, the stories we're telling you, give us a like, subscribe to our channels, give us some feedback on how we can improve your Last2First journey.
This is Charlie Wolf, CEO of Blaze Express Courier Service, Blaze Logistics LLC, and you're watching Last2First Podcast.
If there's one thing we know about last mile logistics, it can be the most challenging but critical component of any supply chain. But drop-off, they make it easy. I sold my business to drop-off a few years ago and had a first-hand experience to see why they're the leading provider of same-day delivery solutions in the healthcare, retail, and industrial sectors. National brands trust Drop-Off to deliver same-day solutions with transparency and timely deliveries to satisfy their needs. Rated as one of the best places to work by the Austin Statesman and a proud recipient of the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America, Drop-Off is transforming the $30 billion same-day delivery industry. Call 888-DROP-OFF or go to dropoff.com and let them serve your needs. Now back to Last2First. Welcome back to our next episode of the Last2First Podcast, where we bring in the industry leaders, the innovators, the people that are moving this industry from Last2First in today's and tomorrow's supply chain. Joining me today is someone I've had a friendly competition with. We used to be competitors when I had my own final mile business. We have served many years on a national board, and he's become a mentor, a friend, and someone that I look to a lot that is a national leader in this industry. It's Charlie Wolf, who is the president of Blaze Express Logistics and Blaze Courier, based here in New Orleans, Louisiana. Charlie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. Good seeing you.
I appreciate you being on the podcast. Good. Yeah. So I want to start the conversation off just getting to your early story, origin.
I don't know if I can remember that far back, but that's
But as I know it, your father was the founder of, wasn't Blaze at the time, it was Barnett Delivery Service?
Barnett Services Incorporated. Yeah,
okay.
That's correct.
So tell me about Barnett, how it was founded, and then when you found yourself getting into this industry.
Right. So my father was in a different industry. He was in the finance business. We had just taken a job in Houston, Texas. His boss over there for the company he worked for at the time was a guy named Marvin Barnett. So fast forward a few years, he gets a job back in New Orleans. He's back here. And I'm guessing maybe 1974-ish, since the company was formed in 75, Marvin Barnett comes to New Orleans. He says, hey, why don't you start a delivery service here in New Orleans? Call it Barnett Services, and we will merge the companies and morph into a motor freight carrier. That was the original plans, with a terminal in Houston and a terminal in New Orleans. Those plans never came to be. Each company operated individually as local regional delivery services in their respective cities, and just life went on from there. So that was the early days, and that was...
What year? That was what year? Roughly?
No, 75, March of 75.
Okay.
So we're actually approaching 50 years next year.
Oh, congratulations.
So, but that's how Barnett Services came to be. And so my father, he, for the most part, I mean, it was just even though it was a different name. I always wondered. I said, Dad, where'd you get Barnett Services from? I said, our last name is Wolf, and Barnett doesn't even sound like a delivery
Did
company.
the guy pay him to take the name or
No,
something?
I really don't know. I don't think he did, but in any case, I always thought it was a strange name.
Yeah.
So be it.
So, but you told me off camera, the early kind of business model wasn't necessarily courier. It was more motor freight.
Right. Let me put it to you this way. From day one, it was anything. I think my father made his first delivery on his lunch hour at his previous employer, where he went and picked up a box of, it was for a construction company, so a box of nails or something like that, and took it to a job site. So it was really anything. But for the most part, the deliveries that we did back in those days were freight, what I call freight related. It was a lot of paint. It was, like I said, building supplies. It was, eventually getting into appliances. Is what maybe, I'm not going to say big and bulky is referred to today, but it was things maybe along those lines. And then the courier side began to evolve, I would say, in the mid to late 80s or so. That's when we started doing some of that. Didn't stop doing the other stuff, but that's when maybe a new focus on courier service took place, something like that.
So when you got involved, when did you formally get involved in the...
Let's see. My dad started in 75, so that would be the summer of 75 when I was in high school. No, I worked summers while I was in school, and then when I got out of school, I went to college. I'm a college dropout, but I went to college, and then I wound up taking a job with the phone company for 2 years.
Okay.
And after 2 years with the phone company, it was like, this isn't for me. This big corporate world isn't for me. It was almost like school. You take your break at 10 o'clock and be back at 10:15 and go to lunch at 11:45 and you get off at 4:45. I was like, hey, I can't be that structured. So I went to my dad and I said, hey, what do you think? You want me to come to work for you? Don't you want this? And he said, yeah, sure, come on. And so that was in February of 81.
Okay.
It's been a long time. So that's when I became permanent. And walking in that first day, I said, well, Dad,
what do you do?
What am I going to do? What's my job? And he goes, see that trailer load of BF Goodrich tires? Your job every day is to unload that trailer. I said, oh, lovely. Okay, great. And then from there, it's just been in every part of the business.
Yeah. And I want to paint the picture of kind of what the business looked like, the industry looked like at that time, because part of what we want to convey to the audience is the evolution of this industry.
Yeah.
So BF Goodrich tires, unloading trailers, that's not, we do tire work, not space today, but about 10 years ago, I was sitting at an industry conference and I heard a speaker say, the data will be just as important as the delivery. In today's fast-paced environment where the last mile has become the most critical component of today's supply chain, customers and shippers now expect carriers to do way more than just make a successful delivery. The game has changed, and having actionable data is the key to winning business in today's fast-paced environment. That's why the team at Dispatch Science has been setting the pace on last mile technology and dispatch software. Since 2018, Dispatch Science has reimagined traditional dispatching to solve the problems that stifle operations and reduce productivity. Need custom dispatch boards and multi-map views for your team by customer or by region? Challenged with turning a spreadsheet of stops into efficient and optimized routes? Or maybe you're looking to leverage API and EDI integrations to seamlessly integrate your customers across multiple platforms. Transform your operations using the integrated Dispatch Science platform. Reduce manual errors, streamline efficiency, and create smoother workflows and faster response times for your staff and your clients. It's a game changer, and their 3 pricing plans are listed right on their website. So if you're serious about taking your journey from last to first, visit www.dispatchscience.com or call 844-558-2011 and give them the discount code of L2F. That's right, L2F, and get 10% off your first month's invoice. Now back to Last to First.
The biggest change that I've seen is there's been 2 changes. Over the years, distribution has moved up the chain a little bit. There's less DCs around. There are less distribution centers around the country today than back in those days. And it was evident about what one of my father's first big customers was General Electric. And back in those days, GE had their distribution center right there in Elmwood. And by having him come in and run their warehouse, it was their first step in moving away from having them do their own distribution. But back then you saw that. You saw distribution at, I'm going to use the word local levels, but maybe more regional levels.
In-source with GE, they had their own facilities.
They did it all themselves, and then they were beginning to outsource But I think even more so, they wanted to move their distribution up and use what we refer to as cross docks to move their product regionally. So you did see that. The other thing that I've noticed is the surgence of 3PL business today.
Yeah.
So
describe what is 3PL for all
third-party logistic business.
It's not direct to the
It's not,
shipper or the
like
retailer.
the final mile carrier like ourselves, we don't own the business, but we have the relationship with the 3PL who can bring you one customer, 5 customers, or whatever. So there's a good, maybe a good and bad side to it, but for us, it's been a good side. But back in those days, as an example, W.W. Granger, it was called W.W. Granger back then. Granger was a customer of ours.
Okay.
We would go, and they were literally around the corner. So we would go around the corner at 8 o'clock in the morning, go pick up 15, 20 deliveries, bring it back to our warehouse, do a quick sort, put it out on a couple of different vans, and do the same thing again at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay? And we had certain customers like that and all. Nowadays, whether it's GE or maybe not GE, but Granger or the paint company, there's a paint company, not Glidden. Sherwin-Williams. People like that, it's like you don't get that direct business anymore. You're going to get that through a 3PL. You have to bid that out going that route. So back then, it was different in that regard, too. And not to mention the technology, of course.
Yeah. So when I talk to people in the industry now, particularly folks who are getting into the industry, and the biggest challenge is like, how do I grow? How do I scale? How do I find these customers?
Yeah.
What do you recall? I know it's your early days, but do you recall much about how your father was able to land these accounts? How do you get a BF Goodrich, a GE? These are not small corporations.
BF Goodrich, so BF Goodrich was actually a customer of someone else, and he bought a small warehousing business. So he acquired that through acquisition.
Okay.
GE kind of came about in the way that we just described. He had, at the time, the customer that he had with General Electric was called GE Light Bulb. And so he would go to the same building and pick up all their light bulb deliveries in a similar fashion that we just described how Granger. He'd go over there and pick up 8, 10, 12 deliveries, and then they'd, maybe send a couple of drivers over there, to split them up and then take off from there. So the relationship he had was with the lamp division. And then that nurtured into, they were both in the same building, or not nurtured, but it morphed to him, getting some of the appliance business. And it was just the delivery. So same thing, go over there, pick up the delivery and go make the delivery. Pick up the appliance, go make the delivery. Yeah. And then ultimately it led to run the warehouse.
Now, I want to ask you about, since you actually did it, you not only unloaded these trucks, I'm sure you made some of your own deliveries of these large appliances. We tried doing big and bulky, people call it now, but these appliances, and it's not the same as dropping off a medical specimen or a small parcel.
No, absolutely not.
What's the biggest difference when you're talking about delivering an appliance? And I'm thinking, this is 80s, 90s. This is true home delivery.
True home delivery.
At a time when it wasn't a buzzword like it is now.
Before home delivery was cool. That's right.
Before it was cool. And then, was it a employee-based model, independent contractor model at the time? How did the business operate? And then what's the biggest challenge with those type of freight movements?
A lot of stuff there. But first of all, the difference, obviously, with home delivery, as we'll call it home delivery, it could be appliances, could be bedding, could be cabinetry. And we delivered a lot of cabinets to remodeled homes and things of that nature. To me, it's a business within a business. You have to run it separately. You have to have 2-man trucks, of course. And what we found back in those days, we did have an IC model, but what we found back in those days was that it was hard to find ICs with the right equipment. So we wound up leasing trucks and having both an employee model and that 1 or 2 IC. We had a couple of ICs that were good, so we just had it both.
Hybrid model.
Exactly. But the thing that you have to think about when you're dealing with home delivery is you really have to have a customer service department dedicated to that.
Yes.
Because I really truly believe we as consumers are more demanding than we are as business people in some cases. Because you will get calls 3 and 4 and 5 times a day from that one person. You said it was going to be 12 o'clock. It's 11:45. He's not here yet. It's now 12:15. Well, we're running a little bit late. You should be there by 1. It's 1:05. It's come on.
Yeah, that's a huge distinction because most companies in our space are B2B, right? They deliver to businesses or pick up from a business going back to another business. But when you get into the home delivery space or the B2C space, the business consumer space, it's a game changer, right?
Absolutely.
And you're right, that customer service component is so critical. And I think it's I missed it when we first started doing this work. I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about the phone calls coming in, and I had my dispatcher kind of set up to do all the stuff, but they're getting bombarded with phone calls and people requesting different delivery times, and you get delayed on one. The whole route for the whole day is up the creek.
Yeah, we got to the point where we did a manual route optimization, if you want to call it that way. So what we do is we had these sheets and all the deliveries for the routes were listed on these sheets, just handwritten on the sheets. Mm-hmm. And next to them was, I think we referred to it as the pinpoint time. And so we would allocate certain time all the way down the sheet so that, and we manually filled it. What time that driver left? Oh, he left at 8:30. Okay, 8:30. Okay, we're going to put his pinpoint time for the first stop at 9 o'clock. Yeah. And you go through this process of 30 minutes, 15 minutes on site, 30-minute drive, so forth and so on, whatever the formula was back then. So we had all these pinpoint times listed down. Optimum route back then was about 14 stops. We've had, obviously, trucks that had less, and we've had trucks that had 20 stops. So, but you want to stay around 14, 15 stops and to get through a day. Well, what happens is, to your point, what you just said, somebody calls at their pinpoint time is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So what we would always say, I always say, go back 30 and go up 90. So your estimate would be, oh, we should be there between 3:30 and 5:30. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. That we gave these 2-hour windows. But we didn't, obviously there was no technology to put it out there to say, hey, this is your ETA, but we would do it when they called. So what would happen is, with stop number 12 or 13 or whatever that is going to be delivered at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, stop number 4 held us up an hour. And then that means everything gets, and then stop number 5 was a little bit longer than, and before you know it, the whole route is running over 90 minutes behind. Therefore, you're going to miss your high end of the window there.
And if you're operating an employee model, overtime is now.
Absolutely.
And it gets, you can start to lose it pretty quick.
Yeah, we had some ugly days. We had drivers out there at 10 o'clock at night, and it was like people calling and saying, I don't care. I want my refrigerator. Bring it to me.
I want to put a pin in that. I want to come back to that because you're right. It's changed a little bit, but some of these core things and challenges are still there. So I want to get into that later on in the story.
Sure.
Okay, but so your early days, you're unloading trucks. You eventually probably take more responsibility on. You become a manager. And walk me through when you actually became the president of Barnett. And then I know at some point it went from Barnett to Blaze.
Yeah. I worked on the dock. I then went into dispatch. I was in dispatch for maybe about a year or so, and then got into the administrative side of it. Got to see the billing and the invoicing and the banking part of it, all of those aspects of it, the payables and the billing and so forth. From there, I went into sales. And at some point, maybe not in the very beginning, but as we were growing a little bit, I said, I'm naming myself sales and operations manager. Because in this industry, operations are tied really close with sales. You can't just have somebody going out there selling. They have to really understand the operation. They have to
talk about that more, because that I 100% agree. And I think, and in my career, I've seen this where it's worked, and I've seen where that disconnect is there and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But like when you go into a sales opportunity, what is the operational hat thinking as you are talking to a customer? And what are the questions you're asking to try to understand? Yeah. How am I going to price this? How am I going to
exactly? Yeah. No. When I'm selling, because I'm still doing it today.
Right.
The selling of the engagement part is, the opportunity to be in front of this person. But as soon as that person starts thinking, I'm no longer a salesperson. I've become an operations manager. My operational hat gets put on at that moment in time because I'm just starting to throw things around in my mind because I understand the operation. And that's what I meant earlier, was because we had a salesperson and she understood it a little bit, but I don't think she was operationally completely understood the whole entire operation. She was focused on a little piece of it. That's about it. Whereas I understand the global perspective of the company. So I think you need to have someone, if they're going to sell, I think if they had operational experience, that's great. That's really, if you have somebody that has the personality to go out and get in front of someone, and at the same time they truly understand the business, that's what you're looking for. Because of what you just bring up. Customers are going to present things to you that you can't just say, you can't look at a canned rate and say, oh, that's going to be $20 for that and $30 for that. It just doesn't work that way. And so, and in most cases, as I'm sure you're aware, you have to bring that information back home, so to speak, and build something for the customer.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of what we do as an industry is this customization piece.
Yeah,
because you're right. Like we're selling a service.
The way I put it is this: you have UPS, FedEx, the LTL carriers. They're all great people. They all provide a great service. The way I put it is that you use those services. You got to fit into their box. You come to us, we build the box for you. So that's basically what we do.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's part of the process. Is in the selling process is to understand operationally what you can and can't do. So,
yeah, understand how big or small or narrow, wide the box needs to be, can be, and where you can maybe put a nail out and make it a little bigger, to make it all fit in and work. Because that's where
we call it a truck stretcher.
Okay, so when you were, I thought about it when you mentioned technology earlier and you were dispatching. What was dispatching like? At that time.
Oh, this was great. I'll even tell you what my training was. Okay.
Okay.
So my dad walked in and said, all right, you're going to be our dispatcher. Okay. All right. Now see this book right here. This is where we log all of our calls. The phone's right there. When the phone rings, answer the phone, put all the calls down here, where they're being picked up, where they're being delivered, and what it is. Okay. There's the microphone for the radio. You push the button and you call a driver. You dispatch that to that driver, and that's it. Good luck. See ya. I'm going to my office. That was my training, pretty much. And really, that's what it was. It was in the very, very raw beginning days. It was writing it all down. It was manually dispatching it to a person, making sure. And when we did a lot of back end stuff in the early days, so when the ticket came back in, the bill of lading, at that moment in time, we actually had, I think it was called. There was a task in our office called pricing. We had all the tickets had to go to pricing, and they would, oh, this customer, let's see, you get this rate, and
after it's called
after
in.
the fact.
So there's no upfront pricing.
No,
there's no.
We made them. No, I don't recall it being that way.
Yeah.
Which brings me to the drivers back in those days, and today I'm sure we'll hit on that. But that's how dispatching was back then. And then it got a little more formal, even with the handwritten, where we hit certain tickets and things like that. It really wasn't a game changer until you employed technology, where you typed in.
Yeah. I know. I grew up in the industry, and I remember those little slips. You had those little slips where you had the three, like the white and the yellow and the pink, and you would one would go to ops, and one would go to billing, and one may go to customer service. It was a mess. Paper everywhere. Paper everywhere. That was one of the things me and my dad argued about so much was, why is all this paper around here? But I think there's an art to that. And certainly, like, when you dispatch without technology, right, it's a lot of, the memory has to be extremely sharp. You got to retain not just who the drivers are out there, because you can't see them on the map.
Right.
Where are they at? Where are they going? Who can best do this? And obviously today it's all different now with technology, but the aptitude, the ability, everyone can't dispatch, especially in an old school environment.
Right. And that was my big thing, because I just gave you the evolution this way. And when we wound up moving buildings and we set up a new operation, we were growing a little bit. And we had our dispatch office was set up. And to get into my office, you had to walk through the dispatch office and sales and operations manager. So you had to walk through there. So I was literally sitting right outside the dispatch office, and I could see everything going on. We had two dispatchers back then, and I remember, and actually just to back up a little bit, before this office was an open space, and we wound up closing it on to make it
like a bullpen.
It was open in the sense that you had to walk through the space to get to my office, but now literally we closed it off, and you had to go into the office, then go into my office. But back in those days, I could hear these guys, and I got fed up. At one point, I let a dispatcher go. We had two. One had resigned or had left, or I can't remember the circumstance. He was a driver, and I think went back to being a driver. And the other guy, I said, just get out of here. I'm going to do it myself. And so I literally went back to dispatching, and I did this for about a year. It was right on the brink of when Blaze was formed. Yeah. I guess it was just me saying, I want to make sure this gets off to a good start. And I did have that knowledge. It was just, I understood where everything was. I knew it was a joke about, we didn't have GPS or any of that stuff back
Yeah.
there. You had map books and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't need that map book. I know every street in the city and the walls. But you did have to have that working knowledge of the geography aspect of it, and then coordinate when your calls were coming in. If you had a big load coming in going somewhere, but you had a truck moving in the opposite direction, what do? How do you do? I mean, look, you just keep going there. Don't worry about this other thing. Grab this big load, go back. You just had to do all that manually in your mind.
Yeah. So walk me through. So I know you mentioned it's about the time where you kind of transitioned from Barnett to Blaze.
Yes.
What was the size of the company then, and then what percentage? I know Barnett was more the bigger appliances, but
Right.
Blaze seemed to be more in line with where the business today, more courier type movement, small parcels.
Well, yeah. It's
So what drove the transition, and kind of maybe where a landmark time where the company was at that point in time?
Yeah, all right. So it was 1991. And once again, or like I said, maybe towards the late 80s, where we had other companies that are coming in, they're doing courier work. And for the most part, what I mean by that is they were pricing their rate structure around smaller shipments. So we were priced at the higher shipment.
Yeah.
So if somebody wanted an envelope delivered, we'd do it. But it would cost them
there.
back then maybe $10 when it was everybody else was charging $7 or something like that.
Right.
And so I said, how do we compete with these people? Choice Courier was in. You guys came along around that time, maybe a couple others that were out there. So first thing I did was build a rate chart to be more in line with that type of industry or that type of business, I should say, small hand carryable packages. And then the next thing came with the evolution of Blaze, because we were doing this as Barnett Services, but we were doing home delivery, we were doing freight delivery, we were doing warehouse distribution, and now we're doing courier service. And inside the courier service, there's a lot of segments too. You have medical, you have the legal industry, you have professionals like CPAs, banking and all that back in those days. So it's a little bit of a different animal, right? And so I'm thinking that chances are we're probably delivering to these people that I'm calling on with our home delivery division. And who knows? We might have scratched their floor. Yeah. It's like, all right, let's try and brand this a little bit differently. And so we formed Blaze in 1991 to brand the company as its own separate entity, but it was basically a registered trade name with state.
Got it. And how big was the business at 91 roughly?
Oh God, I don't want to really talk numbers, but
I'm trying to paint a picture
probably
of the growth and evolution of the company.
In 91, we were
sub-million?
No, we're probably over $1 million.
Oh,
yeah,
maybe.
we were over $1 million, but maybe barely, maybe $1.5 million.
Got it. And did you at that time, did you see Blaze as like, I know you mentioned that maybe part of the impetus was just to have a rebrand. A customer didn't tag you with something that may happen with
that was part of it, yeah.
But I'm assuming you saw maybe some upside, you saw some opportunity that this may be the way forward?
Yeah. To be truthful, I like the name. I think the name really fits the industry. And the name came in a unique way because it had to do with our logo at the time. We had a logo designed in 1983 for Barnett Services. And I call it the wings. When you see our name, you have the little wings on one side of B-A-R-N-E-T. You had the T and it lined up. And the B was over here done in a unique way. And so when Blaze popped into my head in this interesting way, it was like, I started thinking of the name, Blaze. B, Barnett, Blaze, we'll work on that. But E, okay, good. Hey, our logo will work. So we can be the same but still be different.
Yeah.
And still to this day, we have that logo. And some people might think it's a little dated, but it's still kind of contemporary, if you want to, from my point of view.
Yeah. All right, so then Blaze, let's get going. I want to talk about kind of the services that Blaze was offering and how you found success in that and expanding the business under the Blaze branding.
Yeah. So
the industry, service type, what was the growth opportunity?
Initially, once again, we had the professional industries. I spent a lot of my time in those early days down the Central Business District trying to pick up that type of business and all. But then we morphed into medical. And so that really kicked us off, picking up a few medical customers and all. And I don't think that we would have had the right mentality to go after medical had we not just done, like I said, we noticed the courier world, the people that were couriers, so to speak. And we were, from our standpoint, the way I looked at it is we're one-stop shopping. You got something big, we'll take care of it. You got something small, we'll take care of it. And so it was through that means that I saw that the Blaze segment would grow. Because if we stumbled upon somebody that said, well, we don't do this, we do that, hey, that's no problem.
Yeah.
We can handle that.
Yep.
But again, I don't want to come back just to the name and the logo and the look and everything, but I really truly thought that name was something that was marketable. And we probably haven't done a good enough job over the years with it, but I just think fits the industry.
Yeah. And then did you, from a driver standpoint, so we talk about drivers, I know you had a hybrid model on the Barnett. Blaze, I don't know if the early days was more IC based or hybrid, but what's the difference in managing those two different types of models in your experience?
Back then, there really wasn't, I don't recall too much of a difference as far as the management of it. Because back in those days, there wasn't a lot of discussion about employment status and things of that nature. You just, here's your route, this is the order, take off with it. And you could be an employee, you could be an IC, and this is how we want you to run the route. We did see in the IC probably a more motivated person, somebody that got their job done faster, whereas our employees were plodding along and doing their thing.
On the clock.
But, on the clock. That to me, that's probably the biggest difference between the two segments and all. I don't know if you want to jump ahead, but I'm going to tell you right now, the driver of yesteryear compared to the driver of today, there is a vast difference.
Talk about it. Yeah.
So back in those days, and let's just say the independent contractor model, and which we are 100% today as Blaze Logistics. So back in those days, you brought in people. Everything's pretty much the same. You did it different ways, but you'd bring it in. You bring in a person. You'd have a conversation with them. You say, I think this guy or girl, whatever, will work out really well, and you give them training, which we don't do that anymore. We orient them.
Onboard them.
Onboard them. And we have we have compliance and education. That's what we have. In any case, bring them in and talk to them. And my general spiel was that, look, you're going to have to do this for a period of time, and you're going to have to look at your reports, and you're going to have to determine how much money you spend on your fuel and your overhead and how much personal energy you exerted.
Yep.
And you're going to make a decision if you're going to continue on or you're not. And that's cool. You can't do that today, okay? You try to push that out today, and it's like it goes in one ear and out the other. I call it the Uber effect, because every driver wants to know what they're making for that one delivery, okay? We've had drivers that have turned down, they have a route that, let's say, goes from here to Bogalusa or here down the bayou. We have a stop. And let's say it's a customer that we have to do routed stuff over here, so that rate maybe is not a dedicated run.
Sure.
Hey, look, you're going to make an extra $30 by dropping off this shipment on your way up there. Oh, I don't want to do that. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to do as much? Or the flip side of it would be, how much? You got 3 deliveries. How much is this one? How much is this one? How much is? Why don't you look at all 3 together?
Yeah.
I'll take those 2, but I don't want that one. And it's just it's a constant battle, if you want to call it that, to continually push this education out. Listen, this industry is different. It's not Uber. You're not doing a single service. Uber is pull up, stop, wait a few minutes, drive, stop, wait a few minutes. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Totally different.
Totally different world. You have to be educated. You have to be compliant, and you have to understand certain things. So dealing with today's driver, I think it's just more of a challenge because when the driver's a little more educated, that's fine. And the driver wants to understand, well, on the front end, I want to make a decision.
Yeah.
And that's great. But at the end of the day, have all the information. Understand that it's not about any one delivery.
Yeah.
Your worst delivery isn't going to break you, and your best delivery isn't going to make you.
Yeah.
It's everything in between. So,
it's interesting. You talked before about customers at one point would call orders in, and the pricing wouldn't even be set until probably after the delivery is almost completed. Whereas today, with technology and I think just more transparency now, you have a scenario in which drivers are now on the front end saying, hey, what's my rate for doing this?
Yeah.
One thing we did at QCS, like I said, it's not we don't operate anymore, but we would never, sometimes you can show the driver the pricing on the front end, right? You can, when the order comes through on the phone, they can see what they're getting on the job. We always elected to not show that, to avoid some of this conversation. And we would then, it would, not that we were trying to take advantage of a driver, but it then gave the dispatcher who the person was talking to an opportunity to tell them the bigger picture. So I'm gonna send you this job, and I got 2 more coming right behind it. So we'll stack them together and then you blah, 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 blah. Nowadays it's different. So this blades today, the drivers see their rate on the front end, or are they asking, they have to ask for the rate?
No, the current app that we have does not show it to them on the front end, and I wouldn't have an issue with that. It's just the technology that we have doesn't have it. We are looking at some new technology, but no, it currently does not show the driver what they're making on the front end. The issue is not so much saying this is how much it's going to be. The issue is trying to educate them to say, like you talked before, hey, listen, I'm going to have this one delivery, but guess what? I'm going to give you 2 more, and now you're really making something. And I'm just seeing today's driver just say, I don't know, I'd rather not. I want to be off at 2 o'clock.
Yeah,
I don't want to have to go make that extra 30 minutes or whatever it is. So to me, that's the bigger problem. It's not about saying this job, let's say in a 60-40, this job we're billing $30, you're making $18, okay? This job we're only billing $10, you're making $6. I'll take the $18, but I don't want the 6. The 6 one is on the way to the 18.
Right.
Wouldn't you rather make $24 and just make 18? And you're not going to really add any more mileage to your vehicle? I don't know. But then I got to stop and get out. That's what you do. You know? But I mean, I've literally had people say this, and it's like, it just seems to be more occurring today than it did back in the day. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a response or a consequence of rideshare and technology, instant gratification. And also I think that people are just more transactional. We would say when we were trying to find drivers, we're looking for a professional courier. Right?
Yeah,
we're not looking for a driver. Right? Anybody can come get in here and drive and make a delivery, but we want to courier, someone that sees the bigger picture. And that's a lot of who our audience is, these professional drivers who are looking to grow and scale and get to that next level because they see the bigger picture. They want more of it. So these insights.
Which we've had drivers. We've had drivers come in and start their own businesses. And we want those type of people because they will come in and they'll serve you because they'll see the bigger picture down the road. Yeah.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. And early 2000s, I think you guys divested from some of the appliance-based deliveries you were doing. Yeah. Why was that? What was? I gotta imagine at the time the challenges with that type of business. Right. But it's also one of those things where not a lot of people can be successful at it. So if you get in there, you got a niche, you got some good customers, you can do well with it.
I think what happened back in those days, there was some dark days, to be truthful, and my father had been diagnosed with cancer, and so what basically happened, he got away from the administrative end of it, and I was an operations guy, so I never did really tap into that too much on that at that point of my career. And we just found ourselves in a situation where I think he was just overwhelmed with that part of the business. And it was like, I really don't want to do this anymore. And I remember him telling me one day, he goes, Charles, some days I just want to walk out here, flip out the lights, and not come back. I said, I get it. I said, look, we can get through this, and which we did ultimately. And so we just said, hey, look, why don't we do this? If this is really killing you and this part of the business is too much, let's try and see if we can sell just a segment of the business. Yeah. And we'll maintain our courier service, and we'll basically start from scratch again. Yeah. And that's what we did. It was, like I said, I think it was around July, August, something like that of 2003 that we made that decision. Got it.
You talk about your working with your father. I know your son has worked in the business. I'm told he's still in the business today.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Yes. What was that like? So working, I was second gen, and I've worked with my dad. Yeah. There's no third gen. We don't have a business now, but I got to imagine now you've seen both sides of it, right? You've been the second gen working with your father. Now you have your son working with you. Yeah. And just, I'm thinking about that. I'm trying to picture that moment of your dad being frustrated and saying, I could walk out here tomorrow and not come back. 'Cause you got to keep your dad going. Have you had a moment where your son has had to do that with you?
I think my son is revenge for what I did to my dad. No, first the relationship with my father. It was strained and stressed at different times. Obviously, we didn't see things eye to eye on how things should be done. He did give me a free hand to do certain things. At some point, it morphed from him to me that was actually building the business. And I think he saw it and he said, hey, I'm just going to leave this alone. But yeah, I think I bugged the hell out of him about so many different things, just chewing on his ear about, Dad, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. What about this? Now, today, and my son, who is our Baton Rouge manager, he's that one that's chewing on my ear. It's Dad, let's do this, let's do this, let's do that. But he's extremely intelligent when it comes to technology. He talks over my head like before he gets 3 sentences out of his mouth. And he wants to implement a lot of different things. And I think we will, but it's got to be focused and targeted, I guess you could say. The kind of way I put it is, he said, we need AI. I said, well, listen, don't say we need AI. Say we need this, and AI is going to help us.
Yeah.
That's the way I want to approach it.
The use case.
Yeah, what do we need? What's the goal? And let's not just focus on the technology. Man, that's some awesome technology. Great. How can we use it? I don't know, but we need it.
Yeah.
So that's it. And I think same thing. We probably, my son and I have locked horns a little bit, but we're on a good path right now where things are rolling pretty good.
I certainly have had that experience. I remember many scrimmages, as I call them, with my dad, with my mom's refereeing them. And I think what the thing that I found in my experience being second gen is that we both have the same end goal in mind, but we have 2 completely different paths of how we want to get there.
Exactly.
Right? And it's a beautiful thing, because what I've heard him say is that you won't trust anyone more than your own son or your child, maybe a daughter, whoever it may be, in your business, because you know the alignment's there. The challenge is that he or she has a unique way to make you uncomfortable because they know you, and there's a little more leeway to push in certain areas and direction where, the normal rank and file staff person wouldn't do. But hopefully all that comes together and gets everybody to the right track.
I think so. And one of the things, I've had some other folks recently actually talk with him and, look, why don't you have a conversation with him? And because it gets stale from a father-son relationship. He's going to tell me a lot of the same stuff that he's already talked about. I'm going to tell him probably the same things that I've already talked about, or we're going to say the same things in maybe different ways. It's just a few, as recent as maybe a month ago, I said, hey, let's step back from this. Talk to this person right here. And don't have that conversation with me.
Yeah.
Learn it from somebody else that maybe they know it better than me.
Right.
That's been very helpful.
I want to segue into part of our relationship was being competitors here locally. We operate in New Orleans. You guys operate in New Orleans. And I think it's a good story to talk about how you can compete but have a lot of respect and push each other to be better. Like iron sharpens iron is the phrase from an athlete I like to use a lot. So when I came into business, this was late 2008, I believe, when I kind of formally came into business. And it took me probably, I don't know, first year or so to just get my feet up under me, figure out what was going on. I obviously grew up in a business, but you don't have the same appreciation for when you work it day in and day out. And then you start looking around the market, trying to see who the competitors are, the opportunities are, the clients are, customers are, and you start to bump heads a little bit on some competition. And I remember one of the early interactions we had was we were both going for the same customer. I think it was a customer you guys had, won't name it. And I think we ended up having some success in winning some of the business there. And we were trying to compete to win market share a little bit on this customer. And I remember you at one point, maybe it was at a conference, and you came to me and said, I got to watch you. I got to watch you. At the time for me was, I can be a competitor. Like, we're all competitors. So I'm like, let's game on, right?
Yeah.
But over the years, where I think that as I matured and evolved and got to know you at a deeper level, we served on the board together, you start to look at your competitors as really individuals that can help you and to guide you and to give you some knowledge, information, right? But that's always tough in a local environment, right? Sometimes it's hard to do that. It's easier if you're in Houston or Wyoming somewhere. Right. But I think it's good because it happens in the industry a lot, right? You have local competition. What was your appreciation for that? Did you ever, I don't know, say, I want to go take these guys out? Or how did we eventually get to a place where I think we eventually you had your stuff you're doing, we had our stuff we're doing, we did business together on different occasions to help each other out. So I just want to talk about that aspect of the business.
First of all, it was a compliment when I came to you to tell you that. And it was in San Diego, if I'm not mistaken, at that conference, which ironically, that's where we're going to be in a few months. And what I said, I think, I'm paraphrasing, going back, I saw, with your dad, I knew, I'm saying I grew up with you. I know your dad's older than me, but we evolved, along the same lines, I guess you could say, in that competitive spirit to which you refer. But when I saw you, I guess we both were riding our little groove. And when you came along, it was like, uh-oh, they got some new blood in that company. And he's young, he's educated. I think I got to keep my eye on you. And that was what I meant, okay? So anyway.
I took it that way,
Just for the record.
Yeah.
So, anyway, but I think you can say this for any industry. Competition is healthy. It makes people do things better. If there was no competition, you'd sit back and, I'll get to that delivery when I get to it. And you wouldn't serve the goals of your customer. So obviously competition is good. Yeah, there was definitely times that I wanted to come take y'all out. Absolutely. And Hack Bar, they're in our market here. But they do some things a little bit different. It doesn't matter. We're all competitors. We're all friends in a sense too. I just think that at some point you have to think beyond just the business. Your mind has to not just say it's all about the business. It's all about the competition. Sometimes it's not. And this might be the bad businessman in me speaking, because I know there's a lot of people out there that do not believe this. Yeah. But you got to look at the person. You got to look at the situation. And depending on your faith, you're living for another life in a sense. This is temporary. And that's the way I look at it. But hey, enjoy the ride while you can and do what you can for helping other people out and all. When competition comes along, I have no problem whatsoever saying, I want to win. And we're going to do whatever we can to get that business. But if there were a personal situation that stepped up or that came in between that and somebody walked up to me and said, hey, look, can you lay back on this? It would be like, sure, no problem. Because the relationship means more than going after $100,000 worth of business or something like that. That's my perspective. And I remember post-Katrina, I think your dad, y'all had repositioned to Gonzales or someplace towards Baton Rouge. And he called me up. He said, hey, we have some business that's kicking back up, but we don't have couriers. Yeah. And it wasn't like a bunch of business, but it was like these oddball, a couple of 3 deliveries a day. Would you mind doing those for us? Yeah. I said, sure. He goes, what are you going to charge? And I said, what are you charging? I said, just whatever it is, that's what we'll charge. Yeah. And not one time, I don't even remember who those customers were, but not one time did it ever enter my mind that, well, hell, why don't we just go get this business? Yeah. And so that's what I call healthy competition. Right. When you compete truthfully against something right here and you go after it, but maybe not something over here. Yeah.
No, I think that's well said. And it goes back to that respect factor. I want to get to 2 kind of things that we get to wrapping up. One of the things that I've admired about you and really respect outside just the competition is your networking ability, particularly at a national level. Like we've served on this national board together, CLDA. But you walk in a room and everyone knows you. You got relationships everywhere because it's how you treat people, how you perform your service in your business. Right. But what has that meant to you? And how important is that for someone in the audience that's looking at this now, that's trying to get to that next level, building those relationships at a national level?
Oh, it's everything. Our business is built on that today. We talked about earlier about back in the day, everything was local. You went and knocked on doors around here. We don't really knock on doors around here. We call on phones to wherever. We have customers all over the country, whether they're direct business, which we have some medical direct business, or we have 3PL business. And never really understood getting into, at the time, MCAA and then finally CLDA. In the early years, I never really understood of us trying to, what it would mean to be talking to somebody in the same industry and how that's going to make, how we're going to get business out of that. But it does. You make the relationships. You will find either A, you'll learn something from somebody, or B, you'll get business from them.
Yeah, 100%. All right, quick question. Craziest delivery experience that you've had in your career?
Craziest delivery experience that I've had in my career.
One that stands out to you?
There was, there's probably a few.
Maybe most interesting.
So one...
to somebody or somebody.
A lot of the stuff's old stuff. All right. So before they had the technology in the television industry, they would send in what they call these edit packs. And it was just all the equipment that they would need to have on site when they would go do some like remote. So we would deliver all these edit packs for NBC News. When the hurricanes would come, we'd go to the airport, we'd pick up all the equipment, load it up there, and say, deliver it to Houma. Or the one that I'm thinking of was deliver it to Slidell. The hurricane's moving east. Deliver it to Gulfport. My driver calls me up. He says, hey, the guy wants me to go now to Pensacola. Anyway, our driver stayed with him the whole time. Wow. He kept moving the equipment east further to, I think they wound up, I don't know, somewhere down in Destin or someplace like that. I have no clue. Panama City, wherever they wound up. And it was like, I don't have any. He told the guy, he says, I don't have any clothes. I don't have anything to change. He said, the guy opened up his briefcase. He gave him like a couple $100 bill. He says, go get you some. I was anyway, so that was an interesting situation and all. There's a few other hurricane stories, but this one that just popped into my mind about really going back to the home delivery days, earlier I said, I think we are more demanding as consumers than we are as business people. Yeah. So we get this phone call and I could hear it. It was escalating. I wound up walking out to the dispatch office to get on the phone with this woman. And I was supposed to get my washing machine at 3 o'clock. It's now 4:30. I said, ma'am, we had a breakdown. We had this, whatever the situation was. I said, we are running extremely late, but you will get it. It's probably going to be closer to 6:30. Anyway, this dialogue went on for a couple of minutes. All of a sudden, there's this quietness on the phone. And it's like, hello? And all of a sudden she started bawling. I mean, bawling her eyes out over the phone. She goes, I know you're not going to deliver my washing machine. I got 6 loads of clothes here. And I said, ma'am, I promise you, if I have to come out there and deliver it myself, you're going to get your washing machine.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that call. That was interesting.
Yeah,
so,
anyway. Yeah, these customers, they can be pretty demanding, but when they definitely need something, they got no problem making sure that they let you know. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So I want to close out with one thing I like to ask as we wrap up these interviews is your personal last to first moment along your journey in your career. So many times in business, we not forget about it, but we don't balance it with life and how all these things interplay with each other. I know you've had a number of challenges. Whether it be health related or just persevering through different things like we all have. Mm-hmm. But what would you say is your biggest last to first moment in your career?
Gosh, the journey alone, I guess you could say, particularly from 2003 to today, I guess you could say we were probably first, and then we became last at that point, and then we're on our journey to being first again. You know what I'm saying? We went, like I said, we went through some rough times back in those times, particularly with my father and his health struggles and everything. And then even along the way with me recently, I've had a few things that have knocked me out for a while, but it's just where we are today as a company. I really do believe that looking back at from 2003 through today, I see that there's been so much growth and really growth on my part personally. I've always grown in this business. I've learned stuff from your father. I've learned stuff from you. People have learned from me. It's just so to me, that's my last to first, from coming from where we were in 2003 to where we are today. And I'm fortunate to be a type of person that says my cup is half full. All right. And we were talking about this earlier. Be thankful. I thank God every single day for what I have, and I thank him for my problems because our problems could be so much worse. Yeah. So it's that type of, I think I've gained that type of thinking over those last, 21 years or so.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's truly a testament to growth, maturity, evolution, all the things that I'm still trying to figure out in my life. But fortunately, I've been around people like yourself and seen that uphand, and it's true, you can see it. Like you can wear it. And I think practicing gratitude is something that we need to do more of because we're so blessed, we're so fortunate to just be sitting here living, having this conversation.
No, you're right. You're right. It's the ladder of life, isn't it? There's always people above you, and there's going to be people below you, economically, intellectually, financially, spiritually, all these different aspects of life. We're just somewhere on this ladder of life, and you just have to be thankful because there's somebody out there that's worse off. There really is. I am. Yeah. Even for the craziness in this industry, it's like you know how it is. I know. It's high stress, and we never stop. Restaurants are high stress, but they at least can stop.
It's 24/7, 365.
24/7, 365. Never ends.
Well, you've done it with the best, I'm Charlie. So I really appreciate what you've done in the industry. I appreciate the competition for making me better and sharper. And I certainly appreciate you being on the podcast today and sharing your insights and your knowledge.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Appreciate it.
All
Absolutely.
Right,
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, we're wrapping up. Last to First Podcast. Thanks for being on this journey with us. That was Charlie Wolf. I'm Jason Burns, your host. We'll see you next time. Peace.